Nick, welcome to the Hard Lessons podcast. Super excited to have you on and chat briefly on what you've done. It's quite impressive. Today it's a very special guest, Nick from Organics Applied and Nick Snow. He's here to share his journey as a very young entrepreneur, done some very incredible things, servicing in the service business, really servicing thousands and thousands of driveways, along with offering a very unique high-end service using some quite cool equipment, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. Very unique story to tell, hustling from a very young age, now running and scaling businesses nationwide. This episode will tap in a little bit of the struggles, the lessons, the secrets, and that's it, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, man. Pleasure to be on. I love, first of all, I love the name of the podcast. It's especially this year. I've had a lot of hard lessons myself and some pretty humbling experiences, and so I think it's the right right podcast to be on.
I love it. Right on. Well, yeah, fill us in. Like, what's we'll just start off, if you don't mind, painting the picture where you're at now, where you've come from, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So yeah, I started as a kid, just shoveling neighbors' driveways when I was 11 years old. I've always been in business, never had a job or anything like that. And I think in a lot of ways, it's just some people have just an innate desire to just, I don't know, be in business, be in the marketplace. And I've never seen myself doing anything different. So yeah, for some backstory, I didn't have a big picture plan. Obviously, as a kid, I just wanted to make some money, and I live in a pretty snowy area in Ontario. And I just started shoveling some neighbors' driveways for cash. Slowly built that up. First year's couple of customers, next year 5, 10, the next year after that 30, 40. And when I was, what was that, 14, 15, met my first real mentor, a guy named Paul Vanderzon from Montreal. And he exposed me to a business model out there in Quebec that is every driveway essentially is serviced with this model using tractors, the inverted snow blowers, and there's more to it than that. But that it just blew my mind seeing what was going on out there, and nobody was doing it in my area. It was just some landscapers that had plow trucks, and they did a few driveways. They didn't even really want to do them. It was just their customers demanded it. And they're very inefficient. They spend a lot of time in the driveway, and nobody was doing it at scale. So I decided pretty early that that's the model I was gonna choose. And with the help of some mentors, my dad was great support, and built that up over the last several years. Last season we serviced just under 3,000 customers. And yeah, man, so that's kind of the snow business. And along the way, I've always been looking for something from the summer side to complement it, because snow is very seasonal, obviously. And I've never really loved landscaping, never had a heart for it. Nothing against it, but dabbled in doing little paper projects and little softscape projects and things like that. But I never truly loved it. I love heavy equipment myself, and so I wanted to be in a business that was heavy equipment oriented, niche. I want something specialized. I don't want to do the same thing as everybody else. Obviously, very profitable, and I want something with a high barrier of entry. High enough that, high enough that your average guy, cutting grass can never get into, but also not, something that's impossible to get into. I wanted a significant barrier where there's sort of, Alex Hormozy talks about, there's like a moat, around your business, where there's either it's a knowledge gap that most people don't have, or it takes a ton of money to start, or whatever, a lot of risk. And so I stumbled across this blower truck business. There's a company in Toronto. It's been around for 20 years. And they have like 10 trucks. And I just resonated with me. I loved it. Just immediately, I was like, this is something I really want to do. So at the time, there was this little rental trailer you could tow behind your pickup that was available. It was stupid expensive. It was like 10 grand a month. But this was, I think, 3 years ago now. I think 3 years ago. Rented that. Played with it for the summer, pitched it to my snow customer base. It took off. And from there, I was very fortunate. The owner of that blower truck company, Land Source, He's a really, really good guy. We clicked immediately, and he was kind of like, yeah, I like you. You're an ambitious kid. I want to help you out. And so they helped me get my first real truck. And so that's the business that's really where my heart is right now. That's what I want to build. And that's where I'm pushing forward. So, a lot learned from the snow business, a lot of experience there. I'm very grateful for it, but where my vision is now and kind of where I'm pushing forward is on the blower truck front.
I love it. Right on. And yeah, you definitely check those boxes, with the blower truck business of high barrier to entry. That's what are they, $1 million trucks you guys are running?
Yes. Now it's stupid. Like I had one on order last winter, and I had some problems, so I decided to step back a bit and just save up a little more and whatever. So I'm pushing that purchase off. But yeah, the new one that I had on order was 1.2 million Canadian. Like it's pretty stupid.
Holy shit. Right on. Good. So let's back up a little bit. We'll circle back to the blower truck and what you're up to now. But from when and how old are you, Nick?
I just turned 24.
24. Right on. So when you were very, very young, tractors and equipment and snow was your thing. How was that growing up? Being in business and probably running all your friends over and having them work for you, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But also like within the summer, like what did you do? You guys are snow. You're so good at it. And you figured out how important having a niche is, getting really good and offering something that other competitors can't compete with. But how did, that's an issue many guys face of they can't keep their guys busy or they don't have revenue coming in. Like, what did you get to?
Yeah, so I mean, really, the summer side before the blower truck business was pretty small scale. For a while, we were cutting lawns, but it was really only 3-4 guys around in the summer. Then got more into the fertilization and weed control side of things, but I've never liked that business at all. I liked that it tied in well with the snow as far as a similar customer base. It was an easy sell to that customer base, but the truth is, especially in Ontario where I am, the regulations are brutal, and so the products that you can legally use, they basically don't work. Like it's borderline a scam what guys are doing around here. So I never felt great about that. So did that for a couple of years, scaled it up to, I don't know, maybe 600-700 customers, but with pretty little involvement from me. Like that business was essentially fully delegated, and I never loved it. And so yeah, in the summer it's always been a tenth of the guys that we have in the winter. And how that works is, you're really the key guys. You need to probably have at least a couple on salary year round for what we were running on the snow side. But as far as actual operators, things like that, a lot of farmers, a lot of construction guys, a lot of guys that are seasonal in the summer and looking for something to do in the winter. So a lot of the workforce wasn't around year round by any means.
Interesting. And so what stage did it get to? And like, whether it's how old you are or a certain number of clients, when you really were like, oh shit, I've got to sit down, think, maybe put some systems in place, and really start to dial in on the business side, because anyone can run a tractor and blow snow and that's all fun. But if you're not making any money or pissing clients off and not organized, like when did that switch flip, and how did you go about that, not knowing much probably as a younger guy, and more so to help those fellows starting out?
Yeah, so I would say 2 or 3 years ago, I got really, really obsessed with that idea of working on the business rather than in it. And honestly, I think I took that too far to a degree, in that you listen to some of these Instagram guru guys or whatever, and they're like, oh, you got to delegate everything. You got to be working on the business. If you're in the business, you have a job. Like you're an idiot if you're working in the business. It's kind of the impression you get, right? And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think a lot of people at a smaller scale of business don't really understand the big picture. They don't understand, what their high leverage tasks really are. And so they waste a lot of time doing things that they could delegate. And so I got pretty obsessed with that. But I think, honestly, I took it too far, in that I have, in the last year, we were definitely overstaffed, hands down, like too many people on salary. And I prioritize that over because to me, like at my age, I've never really cared that much about net profit. It's always about just like build the monster. And we've had some good years of net profit, don't get me wrong, but it's always been reinvest everything, build the machine. I want a massive company. I don't care. And more so, even beyond like the money side, like just for the experience and the joy of the game, I've always wanted to build a monster. And I think a mistake I made is that, yeah, I got so obsessed with delegating, so obsessed with systems. I had too many people in management roles that weren't that great at it, frankly. Probably didn't invest enough time into each of them as I should. And that just caused a lot of problems. And so where I'm at right now, we scaled back a lot in a lot of ways. And I'm much more involved in the business myself now than I have been for the last 2-3 years. And I'm very happy doing that. Honestly, I'm a lot happier and enjoying my life a lot more this summer than I was last summer. So last summer I had everything delegated. I had nothing to do. I was constantly looking for the next project, just ideas, marketing campaigns, whatever. And you can over delegate, you can over systematize. Sometimes you just got to get your hands dirty, and you got to work in the business too, you know. So it's I don't know if that quite answers your question, but it's a balance. And right now I understand the big picture. I know how to delegate, I know how to create systems, and I'm very much choosing to go back onto the ground level. And like, I basically personally go to every job site on the blower truck side now. And I love doing that, and I'm happy to be there. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad you started off with that, because where we're at, honestly, I'm I guess struggling with it, and the questions that'll come off are quite genuine, of over delegating and making sure things are systemized and run smooth. But and then you're sitting around all day scratching your ass. But
Yeah.
at the same time, if you're running around with a chicken with his head cut off, and you're not doing things how they should, and everything's getting done shitty because there's not enough people, not enough
Yeah.
systems,
Yeah.
like how do you draw that line, and what did you figure out? Like, I know it's a transparent line, but
Yeah, man, that's a tough one. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't think I figured it out yet. I think I've gone too far in both directions, and I can't say I've found the perfect balance yet by any means. So yeah, where I'm at right now is I'm swinging back hard the other way. I'm getting my hands dirty every day, and I'm gonna slowly, more and more though. Even within the last few months though, like this spring, I was literally every job I was there all the time, making sure everything's good. Now I'm like, well, I'm here with you now. My guys are working. Like, once you have a certain level of training, you can kind of let them run. But still, on a day-to-day basis, like, I'm aware of everything that goes on every day. I know the customers, things like that. Like last year, I had a manager on the blower truck business, and he basically knows the customers. I didn't even know what jobs they were going to. Like, I was just hands off. Dude, I don't even right now. I don't even want that. And so I don't know if I have a good answer for you on that. I can't say I've necessarily figured that one out myself yet. That's something we're working on.
and do you think it'll be a metric or figure that can be like that key indicator, or like what do you think it is for guys to look at?
I don't know that it's a super objective standard like that. I think you really got to ask yourself, like, what do you want out of your business, out of your life? What do you want to do every day? Not everybody has to build a $10 million business to be happy. Like, I am shooting for that again. Don't get me wrong, and I want to completely take over the industry in what I'm doing now. But I think I'm going to take a much more measured, slow approach to that, and try and really enjoy the process of doing it more than I have in the past. And so I think you have to ask yourself, if you're the type of guy that really loves, whether you're in landscaping or whatever you're in, if you really love being on the job and doing the design yourself and running the equipment and things like that, maybe the move is you only need 2-3 guys. You go to every project. You don't really need any managers. You have a $2 million a year company. You run it really lean. You net 400 or 500. I mean, what else do you want? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but not to say that's for everybody. Some of us are, we just love the game and just as much growth as possible is what we're going for. But don't feel bad if that's what you want. And so I would say the biggest thing is, like, don't be too influenced by watching guys on YouTube or Instagram, whatever, that are telling you, oh, you got to build $1 billion company, whatever. Like, screw that. What do you actually want to do with your day? And if it's not being in meetings all day and sitting behind the computer and stuff like that, then building a massive company is probably not for you. And you probably don't need to delegate that much. Like, so it's a tricky one, man. I think I don't think there's an objective standard for that. I think it really is an individual thing. And different companies, very successful companies, have different thought processes on that. I know guys with very successful businesses that are pretty freaking involved on a day-to-day level, and others that not at all. Like they don't even live in the same place as their business and it just runs, you know? So what do you
Yeah.
want?
Right. Now, while we're on that, like, what do you want? When did that get figured out for you? Like, as entrepreneurs, and I struggle with, I'm sure you're the same, is chasing squirrels, right? There's always, the grass is always greener. There's always something new or something you could do. Like, when did you, I guess, not like figure it out, but really sit down and be like, like the vision's a lot more clear now. Was there a moment like that for you that you could remember, or how did you stay like focused and dialed in? Like snow, especially, it's a gnarly game, and like it's not just business alone is quite a gladiator sport. Never mind snow.
Right, exactly. I don't know if there's a moment, man. It's pretty hard to take it. I would say that this spring, though, and I think we'll get it more into detail on this at a later time. But I had some pretty extreme like the hardest challenges I've had in not only business but my life, and taking a lot of losses, a lot of really hard lessons. It has kind of a humbling effect where you're like, okay, there's factors outside of my control that just because, you know, maybe I'm good at marketing or I'm good at this aspect of business, I also have significant weaknesses. And just because you're on top at a certain point, that doesn't mean that things, you know, the weather when we're in snow, um, you know, just the place you live, whatever it is, there's things that are completely outside of your control. Doesn't matter how good you are at whatever task it is in business. You could be the best entrepreneur ever, and there are things that can completely ruin you. And so I would say with that understanding of coming to that conclusion through, you know, some pretty significant challenges here, um, I'm not even sorry. Can you repeat the original question there? Uh,
In relation to chasing squirrels, knowing the vision, staying like,
yeah,
knowing where you want to go.
yeah. I would say that when you've been smacked with enough hard challenges, it gives you some perspective on like you have to be flexible. Not everything's always going to go your way, no matter how hard you try, no matter how good you are or you think you are. There are factors completely outside of your control, and so you have to adapt to you know what God puts in your life and the challenges that you face. So I don't know that there's a super clear cut answer on that, but I think the answer is don't hold on too rigidly to what you had planned, you know, years ago when you say you had a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, these goals, things like that. Those are great, and it's good to have a vision. But if factors that you completely can't control go against you, and you got to adapt and you got to change that vision, there's nothing wrong with that, and push forward the best way you know how to in the moment. And so I would say with what I faced recently, it's given me a lot of perspective as far as focus. Like having multiple businesses that you're trying to grow at the same time is pretty stupid, honestly. Like I know that's a strong statement, but it's really dumb. Like unless you have $100 million business that someone's running for you and you have nothing to do all day, okay, maybe start another business. But if you're running, you know, multiple 6-figure or low 7-figure businesses that are completely unrelated, come on. I mean, you only have so much energy, so much focus that you can put towards something, and having that focus split is a huge liability. Somebody who is in that same marketplace that's competing with you, who's just doing one thing, that's all they think about all year, they're probably going to wreck you. So yeah. Anyway,
Lots of Hermosi books, eh? I can tell.
I do. I am a big fan. I don't agree with them on everything by any means. Like, there's definitely some stuff I would strongly disagree with them on. But for the most part, I do love his content for sure.
Right on. Now, in terms of, I guess like ego, you know, like I'm sure that's like a huge thing, and just like if you can comment on the importance or how you've dealt with it, just putting it completely aside, out of the picture, of like these are the numbers, these are the facts. And that's what I'm basing my decision off. I don't care of anything else. Like if you have comments on that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And especially too, I mean, I think it's so easy for someone, an older guy that's had wisdom and experience to look at a younger guy and be like, wow, you're way too cocky. You don't know what you're doing. And when you're young, you're like, oh yeah, this old guy, he doesn't know anything. Like, I know what I'm doing. Until you get really wrecked by some serious blows, you're like, you know what, these old guys were really onto something.
He was right.
And yeah, exactly. And so I don't think you can. I think a bit of ego is good. You need to have a certain level of self. You need to have a certain level of confidence and belief that you can do what you're trying to set out to do. And but what I found though is I think true confidence, not just kind of trivial pride or ego. True confidence doesn't come from successes. Actually, I would say it comes from overcoming challenges, having failures, and just pushing forward. Real confidence comes from like you can get completely wrecked and still move forward. And so yeah, man, I think there's certain guys even in sort of the landscape world that I love. I think they're hilarious. Think of a guy like Goats, Tigran Gertz, that dude?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's funny. Like I really like it, but he's like a pretty cocky dude. I enjoy that. I think it's funny, but on another level, like it can go too far. It can go too far. I think there's a balance there. Everybody's kind of got to figure that out for themselves. But yeah, man, I mean, ultimately you got to realize you're not God. Like things can come your way that you have no control over. And it doesn't matter how hard you work, how good you think you are, how smart you are. I mean, it's not all about you. It's not.
And I feel there's so much power in like getting like fucking ran over by a bus and like just wrecked and turned to shit, and getting through that, writing down or taking notes of all the lessons, stacking all that. And then on the other side, looking back of like, shit, I just did that. I've got nothing left, but I have all this experience or all this knowledge. And then something happens to you again, but it's not as big as that. You're like, oh, I just went through that. This is fucking
dude, exactly. Something like, and on that Hermosi topic, something he just put out recently that I resonated with so much is he was saying, okay, imagine for a second that you can, essentially you're God, not a blasphemous way, but like you can build a human from scratch. You give them all his life experiences. You just place. Yeah. And he's like, would you want that person to go through extreme challenges, build something, lose it, get it back, have people problems, all these challenges, or would you want them just to have a trust fund, like smooth life? Who do you think is going to create the better character? Who's going to be the more interesting, more competent, more capable person? Obviously the first. And so you got to be thankful for whatever comes your way, take the lessons from it, stack that knowledge, and move on.
Would you be able to highlight, like, I know we won't get too into details, but like hard lessons or hard knocks that you were able to take away? And I know there's a lot of shit that's been thrown your way, and in general as a business owner, always dealing with stuff, but especially the most recently for yourself, is there anything that stands out? And if not, over the last many years, what are a few things that if you were to do it again, you'd do different?
Yeah, man, there's a lot. I would say, wow, that's a big question. But I would say one thing is really listen to your mentors who have been there before. It's almost to the point, one thing I'm realizing is that you almost can't hear certain advice they give you until you've had specific experiences. But now, like looking back on what different mentors have told me along the way, they were so right. And I thought I heard them. I thought I understood, but I really didn't. And so ultimately you got to humble yourself and realize if somebody's been if they are where you're trying to go, and they've obviously been through the challenges along the way to do that, you really got to listen, and you really got to shut up and take their advice. So that's one thing. Another thing too is making decisions based off of your own natural inclinations. Of me personally, like I'm a marketer. I love brand. I love marketing. I love sales. I love building the systems, all that kind of, I love the machines, all that kind of thing. But when it comes to the accounting and bookkeeping and all that back end stuff, I despise it. I dropped out of accounting class. Like I hate it. I want nothing to do with it. And one huge mistake I made is I hired, we call him a fractional CFO, but basically a CPA in house. Hired him way too late, and I would have sooner hired someone who complemented my weaknesses rather than yes men who just kind of go along with whatever my vibe is, whatever I feel like doing. And another thing is too, like making decisions truly based off of those metrics rather than, oh yeah, I want to grow like crazy this year, like I want to go nuts. What I've always been a very truthfully, like my decision making in business has always been pretty emotional in that, like, I always want to grow. I feel like doing this thing. I just catch the right vibe and I'm like, that's the business I want to go into. I see somebody else doing that. I'm like, it looks cool. I'm into that. But more recently, I've got a lot more into like, okay, does this actually make money? Does this service really pay? Does this, and getting into the actual metrics of what makes sense from a business perspective. That's something I'm naturally not good at, but with working with the right people, I'm really working on that side of things. So that's pretty basic as far as lessons. Also, people will stab you, like old friends, if they don't sense that they're getting the value that they expected of you, or just public perception changes, you will be shocked at how many people turn on you. Like it's honestly pretty. I'd say that's the hardest lesson, and not so much a lesson, but most painful part is like if you don't appear to be providing the value that people thought you were, dude, they will stab you in the back quick, very quick, and the people you wouldn't have expected.
Money talks, eh?
It really does. It really does.
So to recap, that was really good, Nick. The mentors, emotional decisions, looking at the analytics, not just what you feel like that day, or I want another new $100,000 tractor.
Yeah.
Does it actually make sense? And then the last one, friends and people, making sure you have all your shit together and you're ahead of them, opposed to getting backstabbed. Now, mentors. I've this is a selfish question, I guess, but I've struggled with having I'm too tapped into them. And looking back, I was like, oh, okay, this is their perspective. And then I opened my eyes. I'm like, well, shit, they've been in the same spot for the last 4 years. Sure, they're running a $10 million organization. It's great, but they're not going from 10 million to whatever else. Like, what do you have to comment on, like taking things with a grain of salt? And,
Yeah, I think having a variety of influences is a big part. I 100% agree with you. I've got one guy I'm really close to that he wouldn't want his name being said on a podcast, but he runs a $25 million snow company, and he's been probably the biggest influence on me. And don't get me wrong, I still get a lot from him. But him and I are very similar in that, like, I would say he's a pretty emotional decision maker too. He's no means an accountant. We have a very similar personality. He's probably even more extreme. Like he's he's pretty cocky in an awesome way. But I would say I think probably, it's a tricky one. I would say the answer to that is you got to have a variety of different mentors and advisors that not only have different experience in that maybe they're in a different aspect of the business or they built something slightly different, but also just different personality types. Like, going to someone who's more reserved and more of a bookworm and more conservative, and then going to the crazy risk-taking, like gambling guy and trying to get the best out of both. You're never going to be an objective, you can just completely analyze what's the best advice. You're not a robot. You're going to have influences there that will rub off. But I would say the biggest thing is, you got to have, it shouldn't just be one guy that tells you what's up.
Now, if we can go like a little bit more in depth when you were scaling, because what if you could give us the breakdown, like how paint these people the picture of how big you guys actually are, and what you scaled, what you have
Yeah.
scaled to, and then also like the metrics that helped you get there, like the marketing tactics, and I guess scaling, what you guys used to get there, and you're very young and quite impressive how big you guys blew it up.
Yeah, man. I'd say a lot of it. Don't get me wrong. From a marketing perspective, there's a lot of different things we used, but um, most of it I just stole from Quebec. Like I didn't come up with it from scratch. I put my own twist on it. Um, but as far as the hard, like the snow markers and things like that all comes from Quebec originally. I didn't come up with that. But as far as scaling, like honestly, in the initial years, I think we just had a pretty hungry market for what I was selling, and nobody else was really filling that need. And so, yeah, it was pretty easy, like with more or less ripping off those Quebec tactics. I went from, basically nothing to, a couple hundred to 600 to 1200 to 1500 to 2000 to 2500 to last year. We basically had almost no growth last year. It was basically stuck right around, it was like 28 something, just shy of 3,000 customers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say what paid off a lot initially was I just had like excessive ad spend. Like I wasted money on advertising, no question. But it did pay off because I established a brand and like nobody's ever done around here. Through obviously the service has to be good and you have to do things like that. But no, I would say just blowing the bag on advertising was good and very important in the early years, but it has had diminishing returns in the last 2-3 years. And so that's again where it comes into, you really need to know your numbers and dive into what really makes sense. And that's another mistake I definitely made. Like I wasted a lot of money in the last 2 years on advertising that wasn't necessary. So, but initially, if you're going from the dirt, like pretty much as you can afford on good advertising, you gotta know what you're doing. You can't just print out a flyer and put snow removal on it and expect to get results from that, right? But man, I'd say a big factor to our growth was a lot of ad spend and I went to school for marketing. I dropped out. Like I hate school, but still, that's always been kind of my favorite part of business for sure.
And yeah, like what were a few things that you would look on, or that you'd suggest for guys to look at, like whether it's customer acquisition costs, or like is there a metric that you manage, like Google, Facebook ads? You can what you just alluded to, blow crazy amounts of money and without you not even knowing if you're not
exactly. No, you said it. It really comes down to that. The customer acquisition cost, because I mean there is the whole factor of like you got your lifetime value of a customer, so you got to factor that in. But at a certain point, if you're spending like half of 1 year's revenue on advertising, like that's I didn't quite get up to that point, but at a certain point, especially once you have the market pretty much dominated, like it takes a lot more energy and money to get the 10th driveway on the street out of 20 when you already do 9 than it does to get the first 2, and so at a certain point you're whether you're spending $100 per new customer or you're spending 200, when you've grown to a certain scale, that waste can come in very, very quickly. So yeah, I would say really knowing what does it actually cost for me to get a new customer, and also knowing when is your market tapped out. Like at a certain point, there's only so much density you can get. There's only so much market, percentage of the market that you can capture. When you're at 87% of the total market that you can possibly get, that's when it becomes really easy to start wasting money.
Right. And when do you realize that? Like that could be a mental thing or something in your head, but at the same time, from like you guys are like one in Stratford, right?
Yeah.
We're in like we get no snow. We're in Oakville.
No.
And then there's the guys like whether it's Barrie or even very, very far north, right? It's completely different is my point for just hours away, right?
It is, yeah.
Especially in the snow business. Like when do you draw that line, or like, when can you see that? You know,
That's another one where I think I don't
like the
know if I have a
spidey
great
senses,
hard,
or
dude, to an extent, man. Like I don't know that there's a super hard principle for that. But I think, okay, for example, at Stratford here, we're basically last year serviced, 1 out of 4 properties in the whole town. Like, uh, and we don't get, like, we get a good bit of snow, but the last couple of years hasn't been that significant, and we don't get like the level of what Montreal does. And so you kind of got to use some reasoning and be like, well, if in Montreal they have, it's like 80% of all driveways are done with the model, but that's split up among competitors, obviously. And we don't really have, there's one competitor. I bought a competitor here, and then there's another guy who's kind of grown a bit too. He was never at our scale, but still a player. And then there's the little guys. So it's like, okay, if we do 1 out of 4, then between the other guys, they would do another one. So it's already, we're like half of all driveways being done with a service. Like, it's not going to be, it's not going to get up to 80% here, when in Montreal it took 50 years to do that, and they get more snow. So it's kind of like you gotta use some guesswork, no doubt.
yeah.
But we're very quickly approaching that market cap, basically.
Right on. Good. Okay, so now, like, fast forwarding a little bit, or to closer to where we're at today, like the blower stuff. Like, let's talk about that, because that's I think there's quite a few takeaways from that, and lessons, and I'm just curious in general. Like, when was it you figured out and said, fuck the landscaping thing, the weed spray, this is stupid.
Yeah.
We're gonna start buying $1 million trucks.
Yeah, man. I in some ways got really, really lucky and stumbled into it. In that my mentor in the business, and the guy who helped me start, is a really good dude, and just happened to like me and wanted to help me out. And we have a good business relationship too. Don't get me wrong. They send us all kinds of work. They make money off me too. It's a really good mutually beneficial relationship. But yeah, man. Like, for example, when my one truck will, net aside, it's more profitable than snow, hands down. But gross, we're going to do this year probably about 75-80% of what the whole snow business ever did with one piece of equipment and 2 guys. Why am I screwing around with like 40 tractors? Like, why am I screwing around with 40 tractors when I can have this simple little business that I really enjoy? Not 40, sorry, I had like whatever, 27 or something, whatever, who cares? Like, all this headache, all these people, like 40 people in the winter, all this madness.
And 3,000 clients.
Oh yeah, I was screaming at you, whatever, dude. Now we have like 5 customers. Like, I mean, it's more than that, but like probably 70% of my work comes from like 5 customers. That's maybe a bit of an example. Call it 10. Whatever. I don't even know the exact metrics, but it's a handful of customers that give us, the vast majority of our work, which is super fun. Like, I'm close with all of them. I talk to them quite often. And it's B2B too, right? Like, I actually get along with these guys, the owner of Clentars and the owner of whatever, these big landscape companies or playground builders or things like that. Like, they're actually good dudes. I actually like working with them. Whereas, your average homeowner, come on, like, I have little in common with them, right? So that's been a really fun part of it. But sorry, to your original question there, bring me back. Sorry, how do we get on?
Just getting into it, like, because it's so out there. I don't know how old you were then, but whatever, 21-year-old kid is going, this crazy idea, and I guess if you can tap into a little bit about like what helped you see that, because that'd be hard for a lot of guys to see. Of like, the margins are amazing. It only makes sense, but people aren't like, there's no one else. There's, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, what, 2-3 blower guys within the GTA? Not even.
Yeah, in Ontario, I would say there are probably 5 players in Ontario. 1 is in Ottawa. Then there's us to the west. Then in the GTA, there's two real, no, there's three real ones in the GTA, and then there's like an offshoot here or there. So call it there's maybe 6-7 companies total that have blower trucks in Ontario. There's about, I believe, 35 trucks total. But sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it works so well, but there's only a limited amount of people doing it, clearly because it's hard to get into.
Yeah.
So like how was that? Number one, what opened your eyes? But number two, like what steps did you have to get? Networking, meeting the right people, it sounds like.
Yeah.
What else?
Man, I also got lucky in a lot of ways. I just kind of put my hat in the ring. I was screwing around. That rental unit was available at the time. It's not anymore. You can't rent one, but I just went for it and started pitching it to the snow customer base and seeing if it would work. And it worked on the residential. We barely do we basically don't do residential anymore. But that's a side note. At the time,
I saw you at one of our clients.
Where's that?
On Birch Hill in Oakville.
Birch Hill, I don't know. I don't remember, but anyway, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, some like high end stuff, sure, here and there. We did, yeah, like, but your average home with 2 yards, like we're not touching that,
right?
Yeah. So no, I'll just say, but that's what I started with is doing those little jobs for the snow customer base. And no, man, I got lucky, and then I fumbled into the right connection. Really not connections, it was really connection that helped me get going. And so, but all that to say, the plan was I want to get into this. I'm going to figure out a way, and just keep trying until something happens, and something happened, And so that's all it is. Like, I want to be in this business. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring, see what I can do. And so far it's been working, and that's kind of I don't know. I don't have a great, like, I don't really believe in business plans, honestly. I think they're kind of a hoax. Like, the business school, give me a stack of paper that's going to explain how much money you're going to, like, give me a break. Like, nobody can predict the future like that. Nobody knows what opportunities are going to come along, what challenges are going to come along. You have to face it day by day. And yeah, man, I got lucky in a lot of ways, and also worked my ass off. And so I don't know, we're out here.
And what was there something that opened your eyes to like these crazy profit margins and simplicity and
yeah, I mean,
like
yeah,
being somewhat sane in the mind opposed to dealing with 3,000 clients?
Yeah, here's a trivial one for you. Like, okay, look at your average snow business or your average landscape. Like, yeah, there's some guys, they drive like a decent truck and like whatever, sure, but it's probably still a work truck, and it's like, whatever. They make some money, they do all right. But even like, I know guys with pretty significant landscape businesses, and like, and not this is like, I don't know. You could say this is kind of trivial, or maybe this is kind of shallow. But like, you look at their house, you're like, it's not really that great of a crib. Like, like, okay, cool, you drive to Denali. Woo, we all drive to Denali. Like, and so when I saw the owner of this big when I first met him, this big blower truck with, okay, he drives like a Jag, which is not even, I don't even love Jag, but like, it was just a very nice car. And just it all immediately, when I was introduced, it was just such a next level of professionalism, and just the scale of everything was just so much more significant. And you can just tell, I don't know, you can just tell when people are making, like, the equipment's all perfect, the shop's perfect, everything. Like, it's pretty obvious when people are making real money. You can fake it to a degree, but like, yeah, I mean, just partly gut feeling, whatever, but like, you can tell people are really making money. And so, yeah, man, I did do some numbers on it, spreadsheets, whatever, here and there. I'm like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Got some quotes from, who weren't even my competitors at the time, but guys in the business, like, how are they charging this much? I know this job's going to take them like an hour. Like, what is this bill, And so wasn't super, super analytical. It wasn't super scientific. It was more gut feeling. I want to do this, but yeah, I ran some numbers.
Right on. And so you mentioned it's more like commercial stuff, right? Like, why would someone hire you guys as opposed to getting landscapers to run wheelbarrows?
Yeah, so for example, one of our biggest customers in London, I don't think they have a problem saying like Linter or London, like, we probably replace, I don't know the exact number, but we're talking like 50 plus employees in the spring that would be shoveling mulch. Whereas it's not even like they just fired those employees. They're just doing other work. They're doing installs, they're doing whatever. They're busy too. And so it's sort of like it's sort of like for them automating a simple service. And so, yeah, we come in at a good price that we're making money on, but also they can charge the customer more. Obviously, they're marking up what we're doing for them. We both make money. Their employees aren't mad because they're shoveling, doing menial tasks all day, and their employees are off doing more profitable, more involved work. And so that's kind of the value proposition for the landscape side of things. Playground builders is a whole other thing. That's another probably third of the business. And then another third too is something called terrace seeding, where we blow on a compost with grass seed injected, and it's an alternative to hydro seeding. That's a much better product. And so we've been eating into the hydro seeding market as well. And that's a whole other one, because it's not you can't do it by hand. There's no manual labor way to do it. It's just a good product. And so when you have that aspect, especially when you're getting government contracts and things like that, like, the price isn't really the factor. Like, there's,
It's just whoever the hell can do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because and another thing too that some really smart guys did is got terrace seeding basically in the architect's drawings. And so certain projects, they'll just get it has to be terrace seed. And it's like, okay, well, there's a handful of guys that can do that. I wonder if they're going to charge for that or not.
Yeah. Fair enough. Right on. Now, like the marketing stuff for this, like it's not, I'm sure it's not just Google Ads who wants some mulch blown, like it's a little bit harder to find a client on this aspect and on such a high scale. Like, what's worked from the completely other side of the spectrum, from snow, like a low ticket service, and more of an insurance thing you're taking care of, to the premium stuff with blowing mulch.
Yeah, man, it's totally different. It's been such a fun learning experience. I didn't quite clue into how different unrelated industries can be in that respect. Like, don't get me wrong, we still market, we still spend money on, you're right, Google Ads, things like that. But the vast majority of our work has been from referrals, handshake deals. Like, you meet a guy who's the owner of whatever company, he likes you, he's like, all right, I get it, this makes sense, let's do it. That's where my revenue comes from. It's not from running ads on Google or whatever. It's sales. It's one-on-one sales. Let's make a deal. Let's work together. You're our guy now. And really, we become more of an order taker on that front. Like, we're in the system. For certain playground builders, for example, we do all their installs. We were just up in way north, like almost Thunder Bay last weekend, for a one load playground. 28 hours of driving for a 1 hour job. They pay for that. We do all their installs. They don't care. We just go wherever they want. They don't price anybody else. And I'm fair, but don't get me wrong, we're making money on it. And that's it. We're just an order taker. So all that to say is, it's completely different from mass marketing to, your average consumer. It comes down to one-on-one sales, which is a different skill set, totally unrelated in a lot of ways, but great in its own way, So, but no, it's not really a business that you grow through marketing. It's more of a very one-on-one direct sales type thing.
Even I feel that the businesses that are in the middle, like, we're talking completely different sides of the spectrum here, but I think it goes back to where you mentioned finding a balance of being in the business and working on the business. And I've noticed, like, this year with us scaling and me stepping back, and I've bounced on, too far one way and too far the other way, the same with yourself. But I've noticed this year that the one-to-one sales, the handshake stuff, the meeting people, the seeing the neighbor, I want you to do my backyard now, or, I want you to throw a pool and give me a quote, like, just from the meeting, people just being out there has been so limited for us, because I've been like two step back and went way too far on the spectrum, if that makes sense. So it definitely connects on what you were just saying, of like, get out there and figure out where that balance is, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's overlooked, especially these days, like the networking and just fucking meeting people.
Yeah.
And
Dude, at the highest level of business, I was just talking to a really good friend of mine who has a really big construction company that he's built in the last 5 years. We've been close the whole time. I actually met him. He was trying to compete with me in snow, and then I just bought him out. He ran tractors for me for a couple of years. Anyway, we've just become very close friends since. But he's probably I don't know, like, significant, probably coming up on 8-figure construction business within 5 years. And he was saying what we were talking about last night is, he had a lawyer advise him that he needs to get, for any little, work order change on say a building that they're building, the lawyer advised, oh, you got to go to the customer, you got to get them to sign this so that it can't come back on you later that it wasn't done or something like that. And he's like, no, you do realize at the highest level of business, it's very much based on trust. The bigger scale the business you're doing, the more trust is involved, and the more it becomes a handshake deal. You know who signs contracts? $500 a year driveway customers that you don't know who they are, and there's randos. Who doesn't sign contracts is multiple 6-figure a year customers. And that's kind of my theory. I mean, that's my theory on it, at least. I think it comes down to trust ultimately, and you got to have that rapport with your key customers.
Yeah, and that's another perfect example of that. I was talking to Kevin, he's the owner of Muskoka Landscapers, and they do crazy shit up in Muskoka. And like, he's friends with his clients, and it's like just stopping by and grabbing dinner while he's checking on their job site with them. Like, and they're the same as your buddy, multiple 8 figures. Like, they're up there, but it's still not loose, but it's just genuine relationships, right?
Exactly.
Anyways, listen, let's wrap this up here. Anything you'd like to leave with us? I'd like you to share the last thing, like a standard that you hold everyone to, whether it's personally or employees within the business. Something that you if you have something to add to that.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. A standard? Wow. I think ultimately the standard, whether it's employees or just friends or anything, is simply the standard of like the standard of their own values. Like, what do they claim to be about? What do they claim to live for, and the the character traits and the values that they ascribe to have. I mean, the only standard is like, are you living up to those? Like, you claim to be, believe in this one thing, and if you're doing something completely different, the hypocrisy is the thing that's very annoying. Not only annoying, but it's just I don't like it. And so that I would say that's the standard, is when an employee claims to be a leader in this role, they're a manager or whatever, and they're not acting like it whatsoever. No, the standard is you took this position, you claim you could handle it, and you're not doing it. No, the standard is what was the expectation set out. If it was just that you're a shoveler and you had these walkways to clear, then the standard is clear those walkways. Or you run the whole thing, then okay, well then you're gonna have to act very differently. You're gonna have to be a leader. But no, the standard is that which is set out by the person you're dealing with themselves.
I love that. Show up and walk your talk, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Nick, thank you for your time. That was an awesome chat here. I'll press pause and we can stay on. But where can people find you?
Man, right now,
where are you?
I was doing a lot of YouTube for a while. I've slacked on that for probably last year. I will get back to it though. So my YouTube channel is just Nick Bonner, Bohner, and Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time, just sharing stories where we're at, whatever, screwing around. Partly just fun, my personal, partly just whatever, and partly whatever job we're on or whatever's up, or maybe I'm just reposting some Hermosi or who knows. But that's just Nick_Bonner on Instagram.
I love it. Awesome, Nick. Thanks again.
Thank you.